My parents stood up at Sunday dinner, champagne glasses raised, smiling like they'd just won the lottery. "We're gifting Lily the family home," my mother announced, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. I smiled, I raised my phone, and I asked the question that would shatter everything. "Before we accept your generosity, should we talk about the $140,000 in debt you're trying to bury her under?" My name is Alicia Stevens. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a librarian in the Reference and Archives Department at Portland Community College. People think librarians are quiet, passive people who just stamp books and shush teenagers. They're half right. We are quiet. But we're also researchers, investigators, detectives of information. We know how to find things people don't want found. We know how to document evidence. We know how to build an airtight case. For 6 months, I had been building mine. The silence that followed my question was the kind that physically hurts, like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. My father's face went from celebratory flush to ash gray in seconds. My mother's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. My sister Lily looked confused, then annoyed, like I'd just ruined her surprise party by showing up in the wrong outfit. But it was Aunt Margaret who spoke first. "Alicia, this is hardly the time." "Actually," I said, my voice steady as I connected my tablet to the wireless projector I'd brought, "this is exactly the time. Lily's about to accept a gift that would bankrupt her within 18 months. I think she deserves to know what she's actually signing up for." The dining room wall, the one where my mother usually projected vacation photos, lit up with my first image, a professional mold inspection report dated 3 weeks earlier. That's when I learned what real betrayal looks like. It doesn't always come with screaming or affairs or obvious cruelty. Sometimes it comes wrapped in a bow, served on the good china, presented as love. Before we dive into how I reclaimed my freedom, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below in the comments. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I was 7 years old the first time my father let me hold a hammer. We were in the garage of this very house, the 1904 Victorian with the wraparound porch and the turret room my mother loved to photograph. Dad was building a birdhouse for my school's fundraiser, and I was supposed to be watching. Instead, I kept asking questions. "How do you know where to nail? Why doesn't the wood split? Can I try?" Most fathers would have said no, handed me a juice box, sent me back inside. Robert Stevens handed me safety goggles and said, "Let me show you how to hold it so you don't hit your thumb." That was my father, patient, teaching, present. For 25 years, that's who I thought he was. My mother, Patricia, was the dreamer. She'd been a real estate agent before Lily and I were born, and she never quite let go of the fantasy of it. The open houses, the staging, the way a well-placed vase could sell a vision of happiness. Our house was always immaculate. Not clean, immaculate. Every throw pillow positioned just so, every surface gleaming, every family photo in matching frames arranged by height and color coordination. "A home tells people who you are," she'd say, adjusting a curtain for the 100th time. "It's not vanity, Alicia, it's respect." I believed her. I believed everything they told me. When I was 12, my grandfather died and left my parents this house. It was their dream, a fixer-upper with good bones in a neighborhood that was about to turn around. Dad was still working as a contractor then, and he promised to restore it to its original glory. Mom talked about it constantly, the crown molding they'd install, the kitchen renovation, the historically accurate paint colors. Lily was 9, and she loved it immediately, the drama of it, the Victorian romance. She claimed the turret room before we'd even moved in, already planning how she'd decorate it. I claimed the attic. Not to live in, it was unfinished, full of old boxes and that particular smell of ancient dust and mothballs. But there was a window seat up there where you could see the whole neighborhood, and I'd bring my books and read for hours, listening to my father work downstairs, the steady rhythm of his hammer like a heartbeat. "That's my Alicia," he'd say when he found me there. "Always got your nose in a book. You're going to be somebody important one day, a professor maybe, or a lawyer." I didn't want to be important. I wanted to be safe. And in that house, with those parents, surrounded by the smell of sawdust and my mother's lavender sachets, I was. When I was 16, Lily started dating a boy my parents didn't approve of. There was crying, screaming, slammed doors, the full teenage rebellion package. I watched it happen from my attic window seat, grateful I wasn't the dramatic one, wasn't the problem child. One night, after a particularly brutal fight, my mother came to find me. She sat on my bed, still shaking with anger, and said, "Alicia, you're the strong one. You're the one I don't have to worry about. You know that, right?" I nodded, proud and terrified in equal measure. "Your sister needs so much attention. Sometimes I think if it weren't for you being so steady, so reliable, I'd fall apart. You're my rock." I was 16 years old, and my mother had just told me she needed me. Not wanted, needed. I've spent half my life trying to unpack what that did to me. The changes started so small, I convinced myself I was imagining them. It was 3 years ago, right after Lily got engaged to Derek, an investment banker with a trust fund and a summer house in the San Juan Islands. The kind of man who wears boat shoes unironically and says things like, "I'm more of a Scotch person," at age 26. My parents were ecstatic, not just happy, validated, like Lily's successful relationship erased years of worry about her wild phase, her impulsiveness, her 3 failed business ventures before she finally found her footing in real estate. I was happy for her. I was. Lily and I had our issues, but she was still my sister, and Derek treated her well. He was boring and a little pompous, but he was kind. What I didn't expect was how my parents' joy about Lily's engagement would somehow become my failure. "Alicia, honey, you're 30 now," my mother said at their engagement party, her voice pitched in that particular frequency that sounds like concern, but lands like criticism. "Don't you think it's time to put yourself out there more? You spend so much time at that library." "I like my job, Mom." "I know you do, sweetheart, but a job isn't a life." It was a throwaway comment, the kind mothers make at weddings and engagement parties when they've had 2 glasses of champagne. I should have let it go. But then it kept happening. "Your sister's doing so well with her real estate career. Have you ever thought about something more ambitious? Librarians don't make much, do they? I worry about your retirement, honey. You know, Derek has a friend who's single, very successful. I could arrange a dinner." Each comment alone was nothing. Concerned parent wanting the best for her daughter. But together, over months, they formed a pattern, a message. You are not enough. And my father? My father, who had taught me to hold a hammer, who had called me somebody important, said nothing. He'd nod along, sometimes add a gentle, "Now, Patricia," but never defend, never contradict. It was Lily who started asking for favors. "Alicia, I'm showing a property across town on Sunday. Could you check on Mom and Dad? They mentioned the furnace was making a weird noise." "Hey, sis, I'm swamped with the wedding planning. Could you pick up Mom's prescription?" "Alicia, you're so good at organizing. Could you help sort through some of the boxes in the garage? Mom wants to clean up before the wedding." Every request was reasonable. Every request was small. And I said yes to all of them because that's what the strong one does, the reliable one, the one who doesn't need attention. But around month 4 of constant small favors, I noticed something odd. I was in the garage sorting through boxes like Lily had asked when I found a stack of envelopes shoved behind some old paint cans. Official-looking envelopes, the kind with cellophane windows and urgent printed in red. I almost didn't look. I almost put them back. But I'm a librarian. Information is literally my profession, and these envelopes were addressed to my parents at this house, marked Final Notice and Collections. I opened the first one. It was a home equity loan statement. The house I was standing in, the house my grandfather had left them, the house with good bones, had been refinanced 3 times. The current balance was $340,000 on a house worth maybe $480,000 in this market. My hands started shaking. I opened the next envelope, a contractor lien for $22,000, unpaid work from 2 years ago. The next, a property tax delinquency notice. The next, a letter from a collections agency regarding an unpaid medical bill of $8,000. I sat on the concrete floor of that garage, surrounded by boxes of my childhood, holding evidence that my parents were drowning in debt, and I felt something crack open in my chest. This wasn't carelessness. You don't accumulate this much debt by accident. You don't ignore this many final notices by mistake. I took photos of everything with my phone. Then I put the envelopes back exactly where I'd found them. When I came inside, my mother was in the kitchen making dinner. She looked up, smiled. "Did you find what you needed, honey?" "Yeah, I found exactly what I needed." The dinner happened on a Sunday in October, 6 months after I'd started documenting. 6 months of casual house-sitting that let me access every closet, every drawer, every filing cabinet. 6 months of photographing water stains in the basement, mold behind the bathroom tiles, rot in the attic joists. 6 months of quietly pulling public records at the county office during my lunch breaks, building a spreadsheet of liens and judgments and unpaid taxes. 6 months of my parents asking, sweetly, if I could keep an eye on things while they took a cruise to Alaska, visited friends in Arizona, drove down the coast for their anniversary. They thought I was being helpful. They didn't know I was building a case. The invitation came via text from Lily. "Family dinner Sunday at 6. Mom and Dad have big news. Dress nice." I knew what the news would be. I'd overheard my mother on the phone with Aunt Margaret 2 weeks earlier. "We've decided to give Lily the house as an early inheritance. She and Derek need the space, and it just makes sense. Alicia has her little apartment. She's happy there." Little apartment. Happy there. Like happiness was consolation for being written out of your family's future. I wore my navy dress, the one with the professional cut. I brought my tablet and my wireless projector in a leather bag. I told myself I was doing this for Lily, protecting her from their manipulation. But that was only half true. The other half, I wanted them to see me. Really see me, not as the reliable daughter, the strong one, the rock, as a person they had underestimated. Dinner started normally. Aunt Margaret was there, fussing over the table settings. Derek arrived in a cashmere sweater, shaking hands too firmly. Lily wore a cream silk blouse and looked nervous excited, like she knew something good was coming. My parents served roast chicken and roasted vegetables, Mom's special occasion meal. Dad opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for the right moment. We made small talk. The weather, Derek's latest project, Lily's recent sale of a waterfront condo. Nobody asked about my work. Nobody asked about my life. Then, as Mom brought out dessert, Dad stood up. He clinked his wine glass with his fork. The sound echoed in a way that made my teeth ache. "Patricia and I have been doing a lot of thinking," he said, his voice taking on that solemn quality he used for important pronouncements. "About family, about legacy, about what really matters." My mother stood beside him, already tearing up. "This house," Dad continued, gesturing around the dining room, has been in our family for 3 generations. Your grandfather left it to us, and we've poured our hearts into it. Every room has a memory. Every corner has a story." Lily was smiling, leaning into Derek. "And now," Mom said, her voice breaking, "we want to pass that story on to someone who'll cherish it the way we have, someone who understands what family means." They turned to Lily. "Sweetheart," Dad said, "we're gifting you this house. We want you and Derek to start your married life here, to fill these rooms with your own memories, to—" "Before we do this," I said, my voice cutting through the moment like a scalpel, "there's something everyone should know." All heads turned toward me. I pulled out my tablet, connected it to the little projector I'd set on the sideboard. "I brought some photos," I said pleasantly, "from the house inspections." My mother's face went tight. "Alicia, this isn't the time." "You're right," I said. "This should have been discussed months ago. But since we're all here, celebrating transparency and family legacy, let's be thorough." The first image appeared on the wall. Black mold spreading across the bathroom's subfloor like a toxic shadow. "This is behind the master bathroom," I explained, my voice steady. "The leak you asked me to keep an eye on last spring, it's been there for at least 3 years based on the growth pattern. Professional remediation estimate, $35,000. Lily's smile faltered. Derek leaned forward, squinting at the image. I clicked to the next photo. "This is the foundation on the north side. See these cracks? That's settling, but it's not normal settling. This is structural failure. The engineering report I commissioned estimates $60,000 to repair." "You commissioned a—" my father started. "Next image," I continued, ignoring him. "The attic. Those dark stains, that's where the roof leaked all winter. You told me it was just a minor issue. The roofing contractor I consulted says the entire north section needs replacement. Another $28,000. My mother was pale now, one hand pressed to her chest. "Should I continue, or should we jump straight to the financial documents?" "Alicia, stop this," Aunt Margaret said. "This is cruel." "Cruel?" I turned to her. "What's cruel is gifting someone a house with $140,000 in debt attached to it. What's cruel is knowing your daughter would lose everything within 2 years and doing it anyway." I pulled up my spreadsheet. 3 home equity loans, I read. Combined balance, $340,000. Current market value of this house, accounting for needed repairs, $420,000. That leaves $80,000 in equity, except, oh wait, there are also liens. Unpaid contractor work, $22,000. Property tax delinquency, $11,000. And my personal favorite, a second mortgage you took out last year, $47,000. The numbers hung in the air like accusations. Derek's professional instincts kicked in. "Robert, is this accurate?" My father couldn't look at him, couldn't look at anyone. "It's all public record," I said quietly. "Anyone who does a title search before accepting this gift would find it, which is why they were hoping Lily would be too excited to look, too trusting to question." Lily stood up so fast her chair scraped. "Is this true?" "Honey," Mom started, "it's complicated." "Is it true?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Lily looked at me, and for the first time in years I saw her really see me. Not as the boring sister, the reliable one, the forgettable middle-class librarian, but as the person who just saved her from financial ruin. "How long have you known?" she whispered. 6 months, since they started asking me to house sit." Understanding dawned across her face. All those favors, all those requests, they hadn't been random. They'd been set up, getting me invested, involved, complicit. And then, when the debt transfer happened, I'd be the one who knew about the problems, the one who'd failed to warn her, the scapegoat. You are going to let me think this was Alicia's fault, Lily said, turning to our parents, weren't you? When everything fell apart, you'd say, well, Alicia knew about the issues, why didn't she say something? Our mother's face crumpled. You don't understand. No, I said, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Before we continue with what happened next, I need to pause for a moment. If this story is resonating with you at all, or if you've ever felt the pain of being underestimated by the people who are supposed to love you most, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It really lets me know that sharing these hard stories is worth it. Now, let me tell you about the aftermath, because sometimes the explosion is just the beginning. The dinner ended with my mother sobbing at the table, my father locked in his study, and Lily staring at the wall of evidence like it was written in a language she'd just learned to read. Derek was the first to leave. He kissed Lily on the forehead, shook my hand with something that looked like respect, and said, "We'll talk later, babe. You need time with your family." Aunt Margaret followed, but not before hissing at me in the hallway. "You've destroyed this family. I hope you're proud." "I documented facts," I said. "They destroyed themselves." When it was just the four of us, me, Lily, and our parents, the real conversation began. "Why?" Lily asked. Not to me, to them. "Why would you do this to me?" Dad emerged from the study, looking 10 years older than he had 2 hours ago. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you," he said. We thought if you had the house, you could sell it, use your real estate expertise, maybe get enough to cover the debts and still have something left." "You thought you'd make your problem my problem," Lily corrected. "And because Alicia knew about the structural issues when I couldn't sell it for what I needed, I'd blame her instead of you." "No," Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. "We would have helped you. We would have told you eventually." "When? After she'd signed the deed? After she'd assumed legal responsibility?" My mother's silence was damning. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and recriminations. Lily and Derek postponed their venue deposit. She couldn't make long-term plans until she knew what her financial future looked like. Derek, to his credit, stood by her, but I heard her crying on the phone to him late one night. "I feel so stupid. How did I not see it?" I wanted to tell her it wasn't stupidity, it was trust. They'd raised us to trust them, and then they weaponized it. Our parents tried damage control. Dad called me 4 times the first day. I let it go to voicemail. His messages progressed from defensive, "You took things out of context," to pleading, "Can we just talk about this?" to angry, "You had no right to humiliate us like that." On the 5th day, he left a message that made my hands shake. "Your mother is devastated. She's barely eating. If something happens to her, Alicia, that's on you." That was the moment I learned what gaslighting really means. Not lies exactly, but truth twisted until you doubt your own reality, until you feel responsible for someone else's choices. I saved the voicemail. Added it to my documentation folder. My mother's approach was different. She showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday morning, eyes swollen, holding a box of my childhood things. "I thought you might want these," she said, "since you clearly don't consider this your home anymore." Inside were my old books, my debate team trophies, the birdhouse my father and I had built when I was 7. "That's manipulative," I said, but I took the box anyway, hated myself for it. "I'm your mother," she said. "I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. Doesn't that count for something?" "It counted for 32 years, I told her, "right up until you tried to financially sabotage your other daughter and frame me as complicit." She left crying. I cried too after she was gone, not because I regretted what I'd done, but because grieving people who are still alive is a special kind of hell. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into a digitization project, cataloging 100-year-old city records, losing myself in other people's histories because my own was too painful to process. My colleague Marcus noticed. "You doing okay?" he asked one afternoon, finding me in the archives at 7 p.m. Define okay. He sat down across from me. Marcus was 60, had worked at the library for 30 years, had seen countless students and staff go through countless crises. "The thing about being the person who tells the truth," he said, "is that everyone gets mad at you instead of the person who lied. It's easier to blame the messenger." "That's not fair." "No," he agreed, "it's not, but it's human, and you need to decide if you're going to wait for fairness or build a life anyway." That conversation haunted me for weeks, because he was right. I could wait for my parents to admit what they'd done, wait for them to apologize, to acknowledge my pain, to validate that I'd done the right thing. Or I could accept that some people never take accountability and build my life around that truth instead. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Lily. She called me 3 weeks after the dinner disaster. "Can we meet?" she asked. "Not at home, somewhere neutral." We met at a coffee shop downtown, one of those with mismatched furniture and overly complicated drink menus. She ordered a lavender latte. I got black coffee. "I've been angry at you," she said without preamble, "for embarrassing them, for doing it so publicly, for not coming to me first." I nodded, waited. "But I've also been looking at houses," she continued, "really looking, doing inspections, title searches, all the due diligence I should have done with the family home. And I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't stopped me." She pulled out her phone, showed me a spreadsheet. "I did the math," she said. "If I'd accepted that house, between the debt, the repairs, the property taxes I'd have to catch up on, Derek and I would have been underwater within 18 months. We'd have lost everything." "I know," I said quietly. "You saved me," her voice cracked, "and I was mad at you for it because it meant accepting that our parents, that they're not who I thought they were." We sat in silence, sipping our drinks, processing the weight of that admission. "Are you going to talk to them again?" she asked finally. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Are you?" "I have to. They're still my parents, but I'm setting boundaries now. No financial entanglements, no favors that conveniently serve them, and absolutely no guilt trips about being a bad daughter." She looked at me. "You could do that too, you know. Set boundaries instead of cutting them off completely." "Maybe," I said, "but right now distance is the only boundary I can enforce without breaking." We finished our coffee, hugged in the parking lot, and something shifted between us. Not back to what we were, but forward into something new. Sisters who'd survived the same earthquake, standing in different parts of the rubble, trying to figure out what to rebuild. Healing, I discovered, is not a passive process. It's not something that happens to you if you wait long enough. It's a choice you make every day, sometimes every hour, to not let other people's dysfunction define your worth. I started therapy 2 months after the dinner. My therapist, Dr. Chen, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who called me on my bullshit in the first session. "You keep saying, 'I just wanted to protect Lily,'" she observed. "But that's not the whole truth, is it?" "What do you mean?" "You wanted them to see you. You wanted them to recognize what they'd done. You wanted acknowledgement." I sat with that for a long moment. "Yes," I admitted, "I wanted them to see me as something other than the reliable one, the boring one, the one who doesn't need attention." "And did they?" "I don't know," I said. "They saw the evidence, but I'm not sure they saw me." That became the work, separating my worth from their recognition, understanding that I didn't need them to validate my truth for it to be true. Dr. Chen introduced me to the concept of the family scapegoat, the person designated to be blamed when the system breaks down. Your parents set you up to be the bad guy, she explained. Either you'd go along with their plan, which would make you complicit, or you'd expose it, which would make you the villain. It was designed so you couldn't win. So what do I do? You refuse to play. You step outside the system entirely. Easier said than done. I started small. I deleted my mother's number from my favorites. I set boundaries around when I'd check voicemail. I stopped explaining or defending myself to extended family members who decided I was cruel for humiliating my parents. I focused on the parts of my life that had nothing to do with them. I joined a book club at work, started taking a pottery class on Thursday nights, adopted a cat from the shelter, a cranky orange tabby I named Dewey, after Melville Dewey of the Dewey Decimal System. He was thoroughly unimpressed by my family drama and demanded dinner at exactly 6 p.m., regardless of my emotional state. That helped more than I expected, having a living thing depend on me for reasons that had nothing to do with guilt or obligation or being the strong one. Just hunger, affection, the simple contract of care. I also started writing, not journaling, I'd been doing that for years, but actual writing. Essays about family systems, about gaslighting, about the particular pain of being the responsible child. I posted them anonymously on Medium. They got traction. People messaged me, "This is my story. You put words to what I couldn't explain. Thank you for making me feel less alone." Turns out, being the person who documents everything, who researches, who builds airtight cases, those skills translate to other contexts. I became the archivist of my own healing. 6 months after the dinner, my father sent me a letter. Not an email, not a text, a physical letter, handwritten on his contractor stationery, mailed to my apartment. I almost threw it away unopened, but I'm a librarian. Information is my profession, so I opened it. Dear Alicia, I've started this letter 100 times. Each time I try to explain or justify or make you understand why things happened the way they did. But the truth is simpler and harder than any explanation. I failed you. I let your mother's anxiety about money become my anxiety. I let our debt spiral because admitting it felt like admitting I'd failed as a provider. And when the only way out seemed to be passing our problems to Lily, who had Derek, who had resources, I convinced myself it was practical, strategic even. I didn't think about what it would do to you, to be put in a position where you had to choose between protecting your sister and protecting us. That was unfair. That was cruel. That was me being a coward. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to ask for it. But I wanted you to know you were right about all of it. And I'm sorry. Dad. I read it 3 times, cried through the second reading, called Dr. Chen through the third. What do I do with this? I asked her. What do you want to do with it? I don't know. Part of me wants to believe him. Part of me thinks this is just another manipulation. Both can be true, Dr. Chen said. People can be genuinely sorry and still not be safe for you. Remorse doesn't erase pattern. So I just don't respond? You respond in whatever way protects your peace. That might be a conversation, it might be a letter back, it might be silence. But whatever you choose, it should be for you, not for him. I thought about that for weeks. In the end, I wrote back. Not immediately, not emotionally, but carefully after drafting and redrafting, after sitting with my own truth. Dad, I received your letter. I appreciate the apology. I believe you're sorry, but sorry doesn't undo the pattern, and the pattern is what I can't trust. For 32 years, I was the reliable one, the one who didn't need attention, the one you didn't have to worry about, and I wore that identity like armor, never realizing it was also a cage. You taught me to hold a hammer when I was 7. You taught me that precision matters, that you measure twice and cut once, that good work requires patience and attention to detail. I applied those lessons, just not in the way you expected. I'm not ready for a relationship with you or Mom right now. Maybe someday, maybe not. But I need you to understand, I didn't destroy our family. I documented what was already broken, and choosing to be honest about that doesn't make me the villain. I hope you and Mom get help, real help, not just damage control. But that's your work to do, not mine. Take care of yourself. Alicia. I mailed it, felt the weight of it leave my hands, and then I went home, fed Dewey, and made myself dinner. A small act, a normal act, the kind of mundane self-care that is, in its own way, revolutionary. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the reliable one. I wasn't the strong one. I wasn't anybody's rock. I was just Alicia. And that was enough. It's been a year since that Sunday dinner. The house, the Victorian with the wraparound porch, the turret room, the attic window seat where I used to read, sold last month. My parents downsized to a condo in Beaverton. They're paying down their debts, slowly, working with a financial counselor Lily found for them. Lily and Derek bought a different house, a modest craftsman with no structural issues and a mortgage they can actually afford. She and I have coffee every few weeks. We're not as close as we were, but we're honest with each other now. Sometimes that's more valuable. I still work at the library, still catalog information, still help students find sources, still believe in the power of documentation. But I've added something new. I teach a workshop once a month on personal archiving, how to organize your important documents, how to spot financial red flags, how to build evidence if you need to protect yourself. The workshop fills up every time. Turns out a lot of people need permission to trust their instincts, to document what they see, to believe their own reality over someone else's narrative. My mother and I exchange emails now, brief, cordial, carefully boundaried. She sends pictures of her garden. I respond with polite compliments. We're learning how to exist in each other's lives without the weight of expectation crushing us. My father and I have spoken twice. Both times were hard. Both times he cried. I didn't. Not because I don't care, but because I've done my crying. I'm done performing emotion to make other people comfortable. The last time we talked, he asked me, "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm learning that forgiveness isn't about you feeling better. It's about me not carrying your guilt anymore. And I'm working on that, for me. He nodded, accepted it, and for the first time in our relationship, he didn't push. That felt like progress. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. The dinner, the confrontation, the public exposure of my family's dysfunction. If I'd do it differently, knowing what I know now. The answer is no and yes, and it's complicated. I don't regret protecting Lily. I don't regret trusting my research, my documentation, my evidence. I don't regret refusing to be the scapegoat. But I regret the pain, mine and theirs. I regret that it had to be so dramatic, so explosive. I wonder sometimes if there was a gentler way. Dr. Chen reminds me that gentle ways were tried. That I'd been setting soft boundaries for years and they'd been ignored, that some systems only change when they're forced to. I'm still working on believing that. What I know for certain is this: I spent 32 years trying to be the daughter my parents needed me to be, reliable, quiet, undemanding, and in trying to fit that role, I lost myself. The person who stood up at that dinner with a tablet full of evidence and a voice that didn't shake, she wasn't being cruel. She wasn't being vindictive. She was being honest. And sometimes honesty is the most radical act of all. I'm rebuilding now, not the person I was, but the person I'm becoming. Someone who documents truth, who trusts her research, who knows that love without respect is just obligation in disguise. Someone who can hold a hammer and know exactly where to strike. My name is Alicia Stevens. I'm 33 years old. I'm a librarian, and I'm learning, slowly, that being reliable doesn't mean being invisible, that setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel, that protecting yourself doesn't make you selfish, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to carry someone else's lies. I used to think silence was safety. Now I know it was just strategy, and I'm done being strategic. I'm done being small so other people can feel big. I'm done explaining, defending, justifying my right to protect myself. I'm just done. And in that ending, I found my beginning. This was another story from Revenge Room, where we turn pain into purpose and betrayal into balance. If Alicia's story resonated with you, please don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next transformation. And I'd love to know, have you ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you? How did you rebuild trust? Share your story in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear it. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below. Until next time, remember, your truth is valid, your boundaries are sacred, and you are never, ever too much.